Hey y'all, welcome back, or if you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Katie Marie, and today we are going to be talking about some eyeshadow palettes that I have been looking forward to sharing with you guys ever since it landed in my lap. Even before that, when I saw the release picture, I could not wait to share with you guys, and it is the DeDe Signature's new Skewer bundle. Now, she did send me this in PR. I do have a code with her. I'll leave that link down below and also here on the screen if you're curious, but she sent me the whole bundle, and you can buy these individually or as a bundle. And if you get it as a bundle, I believe you get it like this. So a really cute presentation, really cute box, and then you open it up and you have all four palettes laid out here. We have the Juicy Skewer, the Exotic Skewer, the Tropical Skewer, and the Caramel Skewer. And the concepts for these palettes are just so cute. If you're new to the DeDe Signature brand, her theme for the brand is all about like food and fruit and whatnot. She has a orange palette, she has an apple palette. She did fruit themed quads last release, I'm pretty sure it was, and now she's coming out with fruit skewers, and I think it is just such a fun idea. And the color stories, y'all, the color stories, I can't wait to show you. So let's go ahead and dive into that. As I said, 4 palettes. This is the Tropical Skewer palette, and it looks like this inside. The color stories on all of these are fantastic. I was so impressed. I think the biggest kudos I can give to her is that I feel like they're very unique. They are smaller palettes. There's only 6 shadows, so they're more of those like focus type of palettes, you know, focused on one color story. However, there's such a unique array of colors. You guys know I love colors, so anytime I can play with fun color stories and create something different than that I wouldn't have otherwise, or that I wouldn't have thought of if it weren't in this palette, I'm all about it. Next is the Caramel Skewer. It's this one right here. It's a very fun array of like a purple to green and blue. So much fun. And then I have the Juicy Skewer palette, which looks like this. Such a, like, this palette typically, you take this out and be like, oh no, I don't need that. But she added a yellow and I'm like, okay, now I want you. So I was super excited to get this palette as well, even though, like I said, typically without that yellow, that color story isn't my vibe. And last up is the Exotic Skewer palette, and this palette also just such a fun color story. She did so very well. I cannot praise this launch enough when it comes to the creativity of the color story. And if you're like me and you're someone who really likes creative color stories when it comes to palettes, this is where it's at. I've just been so excited about them ever since they launched. So yeah, I've taken the past week to create looks. At the time of me filming this video, I've created 2 looks with each palette, and then today I did this look and I used, I think, about 2 shadows from each of the palettes. So I wanted to use all of them to see what I could create, and I think I did about 2, maybe some of them I did 3, that kind of thing with these palettes. I'm going to share this tutorial as well as individual tutorials for each of them. So in this video today, you're going to see 5 tutorials. So we're going to be doing that today, as well as sharing my reviews. I'm going to share swatches of all these palettes and also go over any similar shadows, because there are, depending on the palette, you know, there's purples in a couple palettes, there's greens in a couple of palettes, that sort of thing. So in case you're curious if it gets too repetitive, if you buy the whole bundle, I want to swatch them side by side so you guys can see the difference for yourself. And yeah, that is what we're going to be doing in today's video. I feel like I've been talking forever, but at this point I kind of like to stop and switch over to the tutorial so you guys can see these applied in action, and I feel like that's the most helpful way to give you guys a review. If you can see how they apply on my eyes, how they blend together, and the looks I create, I feel like that gives you a good indication of how this palette could work for you. So we're going to go ahead and move into the tutorials. For the tutorials, I always do a voiceover, and as I go along, I'm giving reviews on the individual shadows. And for each of the looks you're going to see in the video today, I tried to make sure I use each shadow in the palette. So I think you should, in today's video, unless one escaped my memory and like I totally blanked on it, but you should be able to see every single one of these shadows in these palettes, in these 4 palettes used on my eyes during the tutorials. And as I said, as I'm applying them, I'm going to give you my review on my thoughts on that individual shadow. That way you guys can see if there are any duds and, you know, what I think about all of them, if I, you know, like some or I don't like others, that sort of thing. So with all that said, let's go ahead and switch right over and get into the tutorials. Alright, so for the first look, I'm taking that green and I'm using it as a liner, and as you can see, it goes on really nicely. It doesn't take a whole lot of work to build on and pack on, and I'm able to very easily blend it out and get a nice diffused wing liner. Moving on to Peach, this is also a shade. It's thin, as you can see, I think, from the video, but it blends so easily. I didn't have to spend too long on this shadow at all. Next up with that green, it's a very soft color when it comes to that green, but it still does a great job in blending and giving me the look that I was going for with this shadow. It's a really great transition shade. If you're wanting it to kind of stand on its own and really pop, it doesn't do that as well, but it does, I think, work really well, as I said, as a transition shade. So after that, I'm just going to cut my crease with a little bit of concealer, and then we're going to go on with the shimmer shade, which is that Chico in there. This shade is very transparent, and you're going to see me take a good bit of time building it up because it is so transparent. It's like an iridescent shimmer, but it is beautiful because it shifts to like a green to strawberry. It goes so well in this palette. It's beautiful. Like I said, it takes a long time to build up, but it is worth the effort. Then I'm using Kiwi to, you know, put it on the outer corner there and kind of using this shimmer to blend it into the matte. This is so very pigmented. I had to be very careful when using it. And as you can see, I go back over with a little bit more of the first shimmer just because it's such a strong shade. It's so intensely pigmented. a little went a very long way. So I'm just going back over with the iridescent shimmer. Then moving on to the lower lash line, I'm taking Plum and I'm packing this on. This is a bit of a thinner shadow in general, just the color is a more softer color, but for the purposes of my lower lash line, it went on really well and gave me the look that I was going for, and it was very easy to blend out, no complaints there. And then because I had already used the shimmer on my lid, the lighter one, I went ahead and just used this Give Me Glow highlighter for my inner corner highlight, and that is the completed look. Like I was saying as I go along, I feel like there's two different types of mattes in here. One of them is like super saturated and intense and like doesn't take a whole lot of work, but there are those other shades that are a bit more softer and I would just call more transition-y. They don't give me the depth on the outer corner that I would personally like, but in a look, they have their purpose. I think they help everything blend and mesh together so beautifully. And yeah, besides that, absolutely amazing. No issues creasing or fading throughout the day. They lasted beautifully. All right, next up we have Tropical Skewer. You're gonna see me take this black and take some time to pack it on and build it up because it is definitely a thinly colored matte, but I got it to build up and be really impactful. And then I took that darker blue and I'm using that to transition it, and I just kind of want to mesh it together to give the blackness a bit of a softer touch to it, not be so intensely dark, and this went on really nicely as well. I thought it was a nice amount of like a thin shadow to work with, but still nicely pigmented. Moving on to Juniper Berries, also another shadow that I thought was very nicely pigmented and blended very nicely. Had a lot of impact, didn't take a whole lot of time to build up and help to blend out the black. And then for that orange, oh my goodness, do you see how impactful this is? I did not have to spend too long here because it's just so intense. It's still a thin shadow, but the color, wow, it pops. Then I put on some glitter glue, and then for the shimmer, I'm taking that tangerine and I'm putting this on. This was a more of a subdued shimmer for DeDe Signature. It didn't have a ton of sparkle to it and it was more of a soft shimmer. And then I took Marshmallow and I'm putting that, kind of cutting the crease with that to really make the crease stand out. That way it doesn't mesh with the orange in the crease. And this shadow also is super pretty. Not super sparkly, but definitely very metallic. If I pack it on my inner corner, wow, it's very intense and beautiful. Moving to my lower lash line, I'm taking a mixture of the two matte blues and I'm kind of mushing and blending them together. I like the blue on the outer corner to give me the depth, and then the softer blue to kind of soften it all out. It worked very nicely together. And then for the inner corner, I'm just packing on the silver from the palette, and boy, it's just so beautiful and blinding, gorgeous. And that is going to be the completed look. I really liked how this one turned out. Again, I used glitter glue to make sure it lasted all day, the shimmers, and they stayed in place, and I didn't notice any issues with the mattes fading out of my crease or getting patchy throughout the day or anything like that. The orange shimmer, as I said, and I think you can tell in this look, just isn't that, you know, sparkly and that metallic looking. It's more of just a typical shimmer or like a regular shimmer, I would classify it as, but it's still very pretty and it did have a nice amount of pigmentation. It just didn't have any extra pizzazz that I feel like most of DeDe Signature's shimmers have, but I mean, really, it is still beautiful. It just doesn't have the sparkle that the others have. All right, for the caramel, I'm going right into the dark blue and packing that on the outer corner. You're going to see me with all of these palettes. I tend to start from dark to light, and I feel like with how thin these shadows are, they just work best that way. And so I'm moving on to avocado, and I'm really packing that on top of the blue and using that to blend into my crease and diffuse the blue, soften the blue out, and just, you know, make a very nice seamless blend between all the shadows. And then I'm going in with pineapple and really pressing that down on my inner half of my eye and then blending that across the blue and the green. And I really feel like doing it this way as opposed to the yellow, green, then blue really helps these shadows to perform best. Not that they would patch off or have serious issues, I just feel like the whole look would turn out a lot softer than if I do it this way. So this is my preferred method. But anyway, just putting on some glitter glue, and then we're going to move on to the shimmers. This is Passion Fruit that I'm packing on my lid, and boy, is it a beautiful, beautiful shimmer. So very metallic looking. This is a gorgeous color. And then I also had to take that Currant Apple and pack this on as well. I wanted to try these two together. They don't necessarily go, but you know me and interesting color combinations. And this was it for this video. Both of the shimmers are so metallic looking and foiled. They're beautiful and they have a ton of sparkle that you can see in person, but I don't think comes across on camera very well. But anyway, moving on, I'm taking the purple and I'm putting that on my lower lash line. This is more of a softer purple. It doesn't really give a whole lot of depth to the eye look, but it is, you know, still a pretty color and it still shows up nicely. It's more mid-tone than a deep tone type of purple. After the purple, I just used the yellow in the palette to kind of soften out and blend out the purple and just help it match and kind of mesh the whole eye look together. Put on a little bit of highlighter for my inner corner highlight, and that is the completed look. This look was really fun to wear. It really did give me that like tropical vibes, and I don't know, it was just very fun and unique and different, and wear time for this was fantastic. No issues. I used the glitter glue, didn't have a problem with it, you know, transferring too much up into my crease. I still had a nice sharp line at the end of the night. No issues with fading with the mattes at all. Overall, very, very pleased, and the color story is just so inspiring and fun and just very tropical, so I love that about it. Alright, we're going to dive into Juicy. We're taking the darkest shade in the palette and I'm packing that on my outer corner and using it kind of to do a wing liner effect here. And then right on top of that, I'm taking the red grapes and I am blending that out. And this red grapes, this whole palette, I should just warn you, is stains. Oh my goodness, I'm pretty sure it's the red, but it stains. But anyway, I'm just packing that red on and then I'm using it to go into my crease and kind of create a half cut crease, but we're going to blend it out anyway. But I'm just creating a shape, the shape that I was going for with this look with that red. And then going in with the pink in the palette, I'm packing that on. I would say the pink and the red are the most intense. The darker shade pomegranate, it gives me depth, but I wouldn't say it's the most intense and impactful of a shadow. The hot pink and the red, I feel like far outshine that pomegranate shadow in this palette, but it's still a decent shadow. It'll give you depth. It just, I don't know, just doesn't give as much a punch as the red and the pink does. Anyway, once my eyes have some glitter glue on it, I'm going on with the shimmer and I'm taking Strawberry. Look at this. It is such a pretty, I don't know if it's a multi-chrome or duochrome, but it shifts from like a beige to a pink. I can't even describe it, but the shift is absolutely beautiful. It's definitely more of a transparent kind of iridescent shadow, but you can build it up as you see me do here. And then after that, I took the red shimmer and I'm packing that on. That is definitely more pigmented. So once again, I kind of placed it down and then to make sure I didn't lose the lighter shimmer on the lid, I went back over and used that lighter shimmer to kind of mesh the two together and just to make sure it all, you know, went together well and I didn't lose either of the shadows. Both of these shimmers are absolutely beautiful. The lighter one is definitely super sparkly. Moving to my lower lash line, I'm just taking pomegranate once again and running that along my lower lash line to get some depth, and then putting just a touch of that pink to soften out the pomegranate. And then for the yellow, I can't forget the yellow. I decided to use the matte yellow as my inner corner highlight. You'll have to tell me what you think about this. I don't often use matte pops of colors for my inner corner, but I want to do something different, and so I placed it there. This shadow is definitely very, very thin, and I feel like it's going to be best used as a transition-y shade, and I used it in a transition shade after this. I absolutely loved how it looked because it mixed the yellow with the red to create a really pretty orange in the middle, and it was just superb. I really liked it that way, but using it alone as I did here, you can see it true, but it just doesn't have a whole lot of punch as I would want a matte yellow to give, because on its own it is just a little, in my opinion, of a thin shadow, and therefore it's a bit of a softer color when you use it in looks. But anyway, that's going to be the look. Very different for me having such a pink look, but I absolutely loved it. Like, I really did enjoy this look. Didn't want to take it off, but it was really, really pretty. Definitely just made me think of like Valentine's vibes, and yeah, I really enjoyed working with these shadows and thought that they all blended and meshed together really well. Okay, last up, we're gonna mesh all the palettes together. I'm starting off with the black from the Tropical palette, and I'm using that to kind of give myself a wing first. And I wanna do this first because, as I said, with the shadows being thinner, the formula being thinner, I wanted it to really stand out in this look, so I wanted to place it down first, and then that way I could blend on top of it and you would still be able to see the wing. Next, I took that purple in the Caramel palette, and I'm placing that right on top, kind of like as my outer corner color to really deepen up the look. And as you can see, now that that black is down, it does not move. After that, I took that red shadow and I'm blending that against the purple. As I was saying before, I feel like the purple is a bit soft and mid-tone, and I feel like you can really see it in this look because the red really kind of overpowered that purple, and in the end result, I really felt like you couldn't really see much of the purple. But anyway, moving on, I'm taking the orange from the Tropical and I'm blending this into the red. This orange is just so very bright. It's beautiful. And then I took the yellow from the Caramel palette and I'm going to blend that into my inner corner and just build it up and mesh it into the orange. And then I'm just going to take a big clean brush and just use it to mesh all the colors together. I felt like all of them performed super well, and I was very pleased with all of them and how much they stood out, except for the purple, but I mean, that is personal preference. So anyway, moving on, I put on some glitter glue. Then I'm going to go into that shimmer from Exotic, and I'm packing that on my inner corner and kind of creating a kind of a cut crease, leaving the middle of my eyelid pretty much alone. And then I'm going to go right into the green from that same palette, and I'm packing that on. Such a bold green, look at that. Because it was so intense, I decided to tone it down a little bit by just using my finger and picking up that shimmer that I used on my inner corner and tapping it over the green, and you can see like instantly it just tones it down a little bit and kind of transforms that green, and I really like the color that it changed it into. As you can see, both of these shimmers are just blinding. Like, I can't get over how bright and beautiful they are. And then on top of that, you guys can't see, but they're super sparkly in person. So anyway, I'm taking that purple and I'm just using it to kind of blend it into the green to make sure there isn't a weird line where the shimmer meets the matte. And then moving to the lower lash line, I'm going to be taking the matte green from Exotic, and I'm putting that right into my lower lash line and blending it out just to get some depth in there and to bring a little little bit of green into this look because that was definitely something I felt like it was missing when it came to the matte. So once that's blended out, I'm just taking the other green from the Caramel palette, Avocado, and I'm using it to kind of soften out the dark green and just mesh and blend the two together. Then taking the matte yellow from the Juicy palette, I'm just using this to kind of soften out all of the green and just help it kind of bring it around and connect everything together and soften everything out. And then for my inner corner, I'm using the silver from the Tropical palette and packing it on the inner corner. That's such a beautiful shade for an inner corner highlight. Absolutely love it, and that is going to be the completed look. I really like how this turned out because, you know, in the crease it's like such a red and fiery and, you know, sunsetty type of look, but then on the lid with that mix of green and pink, it's just really fun and different. And as you can see, I don't think you can see the sparkle, but the shine, the amount of metallicness to these shadows or to the shimmers on my lid is just so beautiful. It's absolutely stunning, and just trust me when I say it's like 10 times more pretty in person. And yeah, overall, like I said, the only kind of con or just like little thing that I wish was different is that the purple popped more in this look, but even with that, I think it is a pretty look. It just isn't as purpley as I had envisioned in my head when I started. Alright, so there you go. 5 different looks created with this bundle and with the palettes in general. Let me know which one was your favorite look. I honestly have a really hard time deciding not only my favorite look, but which palette is my favorite, because like I've said multiple times so far in this video, the color shadows are so unique. There's something special about each one. Even the more boring, in my opinion boring, but even the more boring like red maroon type palette here that typically like I would not be attracted to this. I created 2 looks and I thought they were so very pretty. That yellow just gives a little something interesting, a little extra pop of something. But let me know if you can pick a favorite. Let me know which one was your favorite. So let's go ahead and switch on over into the swatches of these palettes. Now I'm going to swatch them all individually on my arm, and then as I said, after that I'm going to go ahead and swatch similar colors so you guys can see. And typically I do this as an overlay in my videos and just kind of talk and give my review as I go, but today I'm going to switch it up and do music to it, and then we'll come back here to give my overall thoughts and opinions on each of these palettes, which I recommend, and overall just the pros and cons for it. So we're going to try that out for this video, and you guys can feel free to let me know down in the comments if you like music over or if you like just hearing me talk as the swatches happen. But let's move on to the swatches. Okay, I know I said I was just going to do music, but I have to come on here real quick and just let you guys know that I hadn't swatched these before, you know, doing all the eye looks and sharing my review. I am typically not someone who like feels like I have to swatch my palette, so I tend to not do them unless for a video or Instagram. But anyway, as I'm swatching them in this video, I do feel like as I go along, there's some shadows that almost get hard pan when I try to pick it up, and you're going to see that those are the shadows that don't really swatch that well, and it's because I just had a really hard time picking it up and almost had to scratch off like a layer of hard pan in order to get the shadow to pick up enough and then also to use in future looks. So it's really strange. I'm not really sure why, unless the shadow itself is just so dry that when it mixed with my oils, or maybe my fingers were still a little damp from cleaning them off, but definitely something to keep in mind. As I said, with all the tutorials and stuff, I didn't notice any hard pan then when I was just using my brushes, and I didn't have any issues, you know, working with the shadows and picking them up on my brush. So I don't know if it's just something to keep in mind if you're someone who likes to swatch your palettes, but it's something that I only came across when I sat down to swatch for this video. So not really sure what that means, but I definitely wanted to let you guys know and to be aware if you do plan to pick this up, that it is something I ran into, not with all of the mattes, but like maybe one in each palette I felt like would get hard pan very quickly and be difficult to pick up. So just want to throw that out there. I will let you guys continue watching with some music, and I will stop talking now. All right, so swatching done. As you can see, while there are some shadows in, between the palette that look similar because, they're both purple or they're both green or they're both yellow, there are definitely differences within those palettes and within those colors that make them look very different. So I feel like, kind of like I said in the beginning when I created this look, I wanted to create it as if it was one big palette. I feel like it's still a pretty cohesive, very colorful palette that I think, works well together and isn't too repetitive when it comes to the similar colors in the palettes, because they do give you something different. It's a purple, two purples, but one's very cool tone, one's very reddish tone, and whatnot. So yeah, I hope the swatches were helpful for you guys. I just thought that might be beneficial to actually see them. So at this point, we can go ahead and transition over into my overall thoughts and opinions. I'm sure you can tell by this point in the video, but I really do like these palettes. I think she did a phenomenal job with, as I said, the color story, she hit it out of the park. The packaging, I did see a couple people wondering why it was so big. I wouldn't have mind smaller palettes, more skinnier palettes to kind of fit the pan, but at the same time, I do like the size of this. I don't know if that's weird to be okay with excess packaging because it's bigger, because the little ones I feel like, I don't know, they just get a little lost. They're just so skinny. I have some from Kaleidos and the Dose of Colors and whatnot that I feel like they do get lost. Whereas this one, it's a decent size. It's easy to hold. It's just a nice size. I don't know. So I don't mind it as much with the packaging, but I did see a couple comments about that, so I figured I would address that here. Moving over to the eyeshadow quality. The quality in these palettes remind me very much of the quality that I discovered when I tried her quads. If you didn't see that video, I'll leave it linked up here, but I reviewed 4 or 5. She had 5, I think, fruit themed quads that I reviewed months ago, and I really enjoyed them as well. I didn't really notice a big difference in the quality of these shadows, both the mattes and the shimmers. They do really remind me of what I, experienced with her quads. The shimmers are really easy to work with, as you heard me say. There's only 1 or 2 that are very sheer, but I feel like they're supposed to be that way. They're those kind of iridescent transformative shades that you could tap over and really change up a look, kind of like I did with the green today, because it was very harsh, as you guys saw when I first put it on there. But tapping over that iridescent shimmer on top just changed it, and it has a beautiful multi-chrome shift to it that I don't think you guys can see on camera, but it is beautiful in person. Switching over to the mattes, I do really like her mattes. I think they're easy to work with. I definitely think if you enjoy the type of looks that I create with a lot of saturation in the matte colors, you have to put these on dark to light, if that makes sense. You start with your deepest shade and then work to the lightest from there. And it really benefits from a very sticky color base. It doesn't necessarily have to be white, because I've used both white today. I used white, but I've also used, as you guys saw, more of a light skin tone color for me. But I really feel like that helps these perform. A couple times I did do looks where I put these on just a primed eyelid. There was no color kind of correctiveness to the primer, and they worked well. They blended well. Everything was fine about them, but all the colors in general were a lot softer. I didn't see any skipping issues on the one that wasn't primed with a color base. It was just a clear primer. But the end results, I definitely feel like with the color corrected base, or the colored base that I used, you get so much more intensity and punch to the shadow. So that's definitely my preference to work with, because these mattes are, as I said many times, they're very thin. They really do remind me of the Mice Cosmetics formula when it comes to the mattes, because they have that thinness to them, but you can pack them on and really get the color and intensity to them, but they're just very sheer and thin. So if you're someone who kind of goes in very blending and light, you're probably going to get very light results. But if you go on and pack it first, start dark to light, and then blend once it's packed on, I was really happy with the amount of intensity that I could get from the colors. Talking about skipping issues, patching issues, anything like that, as you heard me in the tutorial, and then all the other times I tried them off camera, I never had any one of these matte eyeshadows skip on me, or get really patchy and weird, or get really funky if I did too many together. Today I had so many looks going. I had so many colors going on my eyes, but there was absolutely no issues with blending them together. There was no patching issues. There was no weird streaks, nothing like that. So I'm very happy. I feel like the formula of her mattes are very user friendly, and if you're someone who's a more beginner into color, I definitely feel like a formula like this would be a really good stepping stone to getting into color. The one big con that I can think of with these matte palettes or the matte eyeshadows, is that the more brighter ones are definitely, because they are sheer, don't show up maybe to the level that I would like them to, and maybe that's just me being greedy. But colors like, this shade right here, it's like a neon yellow. It's just so very bright. Just think of a highlighter yellow. That's the type of yellow this is. And for me personally, it shows up very nicely, but maybe not as intense and thick, because it's such a thin shadow. It doesn't show up as intensely thick. It works amazing and beautiful as those transition shades that pop of color. But if you're really wanting it to be the center of the look. I feel like overall it'll be a little bit soft, and maybe that's just me thinking this. I mean, I feel like for the look that I created using this as an inner corner highlight, you could definitely see it and it shows up, but I wouldn't mind, I don't know, I just wouldn't mind a little bit more punch to it. But that is just something to keep in mind with her formula, because it is that thinner type of formula. When you're working with it, the lighter tones either need a lot of help building up to get the intensity that you might want, or they're just going to end up, when you've blended everything together, will look a little bit more toned down than maybe it looks like in the pan, if that makes sense. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out to be aware of if you're going in to purchase these palettes, something to think of, and just something to know as a buyer, so you guys can have as much info as I can give you guys in this review. So yeah, is that my review? I think that was everything that I wanted to cover in today's review. As I said in the beginning of this video, I created 2 looks with each of these palettes because I wanted to be able to not only test the longevity of it, but just test the color story mixed up in different ways. So I only, of course, shared one on camera, but I'm going to share all of them in my next Palette Palooza Countdown review series, and I'll share everything that I created with you. And I definitely want to create at least one more look with each, so I have 3 looks done with each of these palettes, because I feel like that's a nice rounded feel for it in my final review. But I don't anticipate my thoughts will change much, but I just didn't want to do all 3 looks before doing this video because I am trying to get it up before these palettes launch. So if you want more information on purchasing them, the launch date, that sort of thing, I'll leave everything down in the description box down below, as well as I told you guys this was sent to me in PR, and I do have an affiliate code with DeDe Signature. I'll put it on the screen here once again, but I'll leave it down in the description box as well. If you want to purchase with that code, it'll give you a discount, and I'll get a little kickback for referring you, and that's how they can see that I referred you if you use my code. No pressure though to use my code. I know a lot of my friends here on YouTube have codes with them as well, so feel free to use whoever you want. Just use a code because I like saving a little money. So use anyone's code, just use a discount, get a discount. I think it's great to save money when you can. And yeah, that is going to do it for my review today. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I really tried to pack it in with as much information as I could, and then, you know, of course on camera trying to show you guys how the formula works together, swatches and all that sort of thing. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys if this video is helpful, how I could improve it in the future when I do reviews like this, what information did I leave out that I could include in the future. I'd love to know that as well. That's very helpful for me. And let me know down in the comments which is your favorite look, or which is your favorite palette. Out of all 4 palettes that are launching from DeDe Signature, which one catches your eye the most? And if it's all 4 like me, you can say that too, because like literally they're all just so beautiful. I couldn't pick a favorite. So let me know your thoughts down below, and let me know if you plan to get it. I'd love to hear that as well, if you're going to plan to pick it up, and what you guys think, if you guys tried DeDe Signature before, or if this is going to be your first try from them. Let me know all that down below in the comments. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. Thank you guys so very much for watching. If you want to continue getting daily content from me, I'm over on Instagram. I'm LadyKatie92, and I post over there like reels, close-up makeup looks. I've done a lot of fun things with these palettes over there, kind of more like funny reels and stuff like that. It's been fun, kind of experimenting. But anyway, LadyKatie92 over there, and with all that said, I will see you guys very soon in my next one. Bye guys.